he's evil, obviously, because he killed the president, but like he's vainglorious. Like all he wants is to be famous. He wants to sign autographs. He's offended when someone doesn't want to take a picture with him. I mean, they don't take pictures, obviously, because it's the 1800s, but like
they take drawings.
Right.
Welcome to another episode of Is This for Kids? I am Jonathan Beard of Blevins.
I'm Katie, Mrs. Ruby.
And boy, do we have a killer episode for you today.
Nice.
Very
nice.
Thank you. But before we get into what it's about, it is funny. Well, we're talking about Manhunt. We might as well.
Yes, the Apple TV original mini-series Manhunt.
About Abraham Lincoln and John Wilkes Booth and the hunt
not about Abraham Lincoln.
For him. Yes, it is.
No, it's about the 12-day hunt for John Wilkes Booth.
Because of Abraham Lincoln.
Sure, but Abraham Lincoln is like a tertiary character in it.
Yes, in the show, but in real life.
Well, sure.
The whole show doesn't ever get made if it wasn't for Abraham Lincoln.
All right.
Right?
I mean, in that way, it's
Thank you.
About the
but before we get in
trades.
Yeah, that's a good point. But real quick, when you were growing up, I'm talking like first, second, third, fourth, or fifth grade. I really have a bad memory of my life at those ages. Like I don't remember much.
Sure.
So I don't know how old I was. But I'm curious for you, what like historical event fascinated you the most when you were young?
Oh.
Did you have one you were like fixated on?
Yeah.
What was it?
The sinking of the Titanic.
Because of the movie with Leonardo DiCaprio.
That came out.
There was enough room for both on that door, by the way.
That came out in 1997 when I was in 7th grade.
So not that.
Not then, no. But I was very excited about it because I was interested in it. I saw an IMAX movie when I was like in 3rd grade about it. Also about the Alcatraz prison. I was real into that, but not really any one particular event. Saw Murder in the First at a very young age.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's impressive. Mine was Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah.
And his assassination.
Okay.
Growing up, they made Abraham Lincoln, when I learned everything about him, it was like, he's the best president we've ever had.
Yes.
That was just hands down what everyone taught. And so I was like, I like this guy. He had a top hat. I'm pretty sure I chose him as like a project to present on multiple times. And so for me, it was that. So I was so excited about Manhunt when you said that we're going to talk about it. And I was like, well, it doesn't make sense because it's not a kid's show, but like, here we are.
Yeah.
And I watched it.
And you loved it.
It was, no, not what the show's about. We're not a movie review or a show review podcast. We're going to talk about whether or not it's for kids, but let's just say I was left wanting.
You were wrong. I really liked it.
Okay. Well, you get to talk about it since you're so excited.
Sure.
And can let everyone know about Manhunt, which they can find on Apple TV. It is a mini-series. 7 episodes.
Yep. So Manhunt is like really kind of just a very broad overview is that it is the 12-day hunt for John Wilkes Booth after the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. The main character in this is Secretary of War Edwin Stanton, which is a guy most of us don't know anything about. I Googled a lot about him while I was watching it. Like, did that really happen? How about that?
He had a beard.
That's all he cares about is the fact that the actor had no beard and the character did, or the real life person did. Yada, yada. So I ended up doing a lot of like, did that happen? Is that real? Who's real? What's not real? I was Googling so much. And it was basically like, when we were homeschooling before, we would do, what are those called? Shoot, I can't remember what the word was, like folders, where you would do a lesson just on one thing because you got real into it and you let your kid just like study this one thing for a really long time. There's a word for that and I can't think of what it is anymore because I haven't homeschooled in a while.
Jody might know, but I don't. I probably should.
I hate that. My brain just fuzzed out on that one. But like it gives you the opportunity, and most of like the things that I know in my life, I know because I saw it in a movie and I like Googled if that was real. So this gave a lot of opportunity for that. And one of the things that I think would be really concerning for people is when you look at a time during the Civil War, are things going to be accurately portrayed? Are things going to be portrayed in a way that is respectful of everyone's human dignity, those kinds of things. And they did a really good job of picking the characters out. Like Edwin Stanton was a staunch abolitionist. So like he was originally one of the people that was running for president instead of Abraham Lincoln. And because Abraham Lincoln was more wishy-washy on the issue of slavery, he ended up being the candidate because Edwin Stanton was too abolitionist. So they picked a really good guy to use that. And then they pulled out the story of Mary Sims, who was an enslaved woman enslaved by Dr. Mudd, one of the co-conspirators in the Lincoln assassination. She really did testify against Dr. Mudd, one of the first women of color to testify, especially in a federal trial like this. So her existence in this, although her story is like heavily fictionalized because there's just not enough information out there
Right.
about her. But her testimony in there was word for word.
Wow.
Yeah, it was fantastic. I really liked it. I thought it did a great job of like having that that diversity, that interest in showing both sides of the story in ways that you don't usually get to see.
Yeah. So I don't necessarily disagree with anything that you said.
Yeah.
And since we're not a TV show review, I'll just leave most of my thoughts out. Other than that, it just didn't. It felt like it didn't feel like it was trying to be historically accurate to me, and so I'm interested. Like I didn't Google a whole bunch of stuff as I was watching it,
Totally
and so
Googled.
that's interesting to me for sure. I just want to say that one of my favorite things about doing this podcast with you is that I get to watch a lot of really cool things that I otherwise wouldn't watch.
Yeah.
Jody and I are not spending money on a babysitter to go to movies. We're not going to go. We're not going to if we are going to go get a babysitter. We're not going to go to a movie because we can't talk. So like I just in the last 8-9 years haven't seen a lot of movies, and now that we're doing this podcast I get to see lots of them and lots of shows that I otherwise wouldn't watch, like this one. But I'm curious what you think about in general about whether or not it's for kids, and I know that you are interested in having a fun discussion on this seemingly adult television show, adult content, and when it's okay for kids to start introducing kids into that. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking when I looked at this, because we talked we've done an episode about Suits and Friends and things like that. There were also not kid content. And we talked a little bit about the idea of growing into it and being sort of allowed to be admitted to this adult world of media. And when do you do that? How do you do that? And I really felt like Manhunt was a good option for that because it sort of scratches an itch for a true crime style, like thriller sort of thing, without being overly gruesome or murdery. I mean, obviously someone gets murdered. That's literally the
in the first episode.
The first episode, and it is bloody. They show him, laying on a bed with blood all behind his head and things like that. He's still conscious during that part, which is interesting. But I think that this does a really good job of interesting kids in that way that I was talking about, where like you look at it and go, was that real? I want to know more.
Right.
I want to get into this. And then oftentimes shows that are trying to get kids into like an adult type thing, what they mean when they say adult media is sexy media, like things that just have more boobs now. This has no boobs. There's no sex in this entire thing.
Yep.
And it's good storytelling. It's curiosity based. It's complicated. Like John Wilkes Booth as a character, he's evil, obviously, because he killed the president, but like he's vainglorious. Like all he wants is to be famous. He wants to sign autographs. He's offended when someone doesn't want to take a picture with him. I mean, they don't take pictures, obviously, because it's the 1800s, but like
they take drawings.
Right. He's like, you don't want me to sign my like read my diary. I think I'm great. Like it's just a really interesting way to look at this person that we kind of bought into the narrative that they wanted you to buy in at the trial, that he was like a Southern soldier or whatever. He wasn't. He was just an idiot. Like he was just a jerk who wanted to be famous and thought that this was going to be a great way to do it. Now there was some tie-ins and the Confederacy was involved in those kinds of things, but it's just like a more complicated, more interesting character, a more interesting way to look at the world. And especially when they bring in the story of Mary Sims and her family and you get to look at that complicated thing. I think that's good for kids to see what is sort of boring to a little kid is something that's heavily dialogue driven, something that's very historical, and encourage them to be curious and interested.
Can you give me, I don't think you're wrong.
Okay.
Can you give me an example of another show that might be something similar, that is trying to accomplish something similar?
Off the top of my head?
Yeah.
Like I think The West Wing did a good job of that a little bit.
So I haven't seen The West Wing.
It's older. So that would be a really...
I'm just trying to like picture, because I'm with you 100%. I mean, I personally think that with this, there was the language, the violence, and the seriousness of the subject matter. Mm-hmm. I don't know how old you're going to say this is, but I'm thinking like 13, 14. Mm-hmm. I would have probably been bored at 13 and 14, but maybe not, because I was fascinated with Abraham Lincoln and John Wilkes Booth and the assassination of this whole entire thing. So maybe this is something that when I was a kid and I was watching with my parents, that I would have been like, oh, I want to watch this and graduate from Cat Dog.
Yeah. You know what it is?
And Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, which are the shows I was watching.
Right. You know what I'm thinking is like, how many kids did you know in high school who were watching Law and Order? Like Law and Order was like really quite popular amongst
high
kids
school?
in my high school.
When they were off sick and watching it all day long.
All day long. Like
100%.
Kids got really into it. And when we went to college, like if you walk down my dorm, it was just dun dun dun
Yep.
dun every
Dun,
30
dun.
seconds. Like everybody was watching Law and Order. And what the problem is that Law and Order very quickly caught on that their best viewed episodes were the ones with sex crimes. So what happened? Law and Order SVU became a thing.
Oh my gosh.
Because the original Law and Order with Jerry Orbach was murders, kidnappings, a little bit of extortion
and
here.
way more courtrooms.
Way more courtrooms. And then we just went, when they started noticing this trend that the sexy episodes are the ones that get the most watch, we get Law and Order SVU. And now I don't know a single girl in college who doesn't have pepper spray because of an episode of Law and Order SVU. Like,
I've never thought of this. I mean, the same thing with CSI.
Yeah.
They were like, oh, CSI? No, we need CSI Miami.
Where it's a little sexier and everybody's dress is a little shorter.
Or Vegas.
Yes.
What?
Yes. So when you're trying to like grow a kid into adult media, you want them to be interested in the storyline. You want them to be like, so that's what I say. Like this scratches that true crime itch, that feel for it, that like wanting to solve a mystery or whatever. That's there. Yeah. But it also gives you the opportunity to like learn something and Google something. And like, it's not all true. I'm not telling you that you need to walk away from this and think that this was an accurate depiction, but it gives you something interesting to Google. Would you like to know the interestingest thing that I Googled?
I do. Yep, please. I want to know exactly how you typed it in the search bar.
I don't know how I typed it in the search bar. The man who killed John Wilkes Booth. I don't want to spoil this for you, but John Wilkes Booth is dead.
He is no longer with us.
Yeah, he did not survive the whole ordeal. He was shot in a barn by a guy named Boston Corbett. So there's the scene when you meet Boston Corbett, they're like, he's a lunatic, but he's really nice. And they call him a eunuch. And I was like, why do they call him a eunuch? I Googled this. Boston Corbett was an alcoholic. His wife and child died during the course of the war, and before the war. Yeah, he was very, very depressed and eventually became born again, for lack of a better term. He found God and became a religious man. And he was probably also a little bit schizophrenic. Okay. So his response to having sexual desires after his wife had died was to castrate himself with a pair of scissors.
And so you Googled, is this true?
No, I said, is Boston Corbett a eunuch?
Is he a eunuch? Okay.
Is he a eunuch? I Googled it. Yeah, he cut off his main parts with a pair of scissors. But here's
Reminder that this podcast is not for kids. Yeah.
Wild, though, he does this with a pair of scissors, has no response, puts his pants back on, and goes about his day. Like nobody even knew it happened. Wild.
Okay, but there's no way for us to actually prove that part,
I don't know,
right?
but that's what people say. Like that and eventually, like he killed John Wilkes Booth. He was like, he went around and like highlighted the fact that he was the man who killed the president. Like he was very proud of that, but he ended up dying in a mental hospital in Topeka, Kansas.
Fascinating.
Yes.
So you're saying that in order for me to just get a little more invested in the show, I need to be Googling things throughout it.
Yes. I don't know how you watch a show like this with that. Like I did this with everything. Like
I do this sometimes too. So I'm like interested in why I didn't do it with this.
So like I really liked The Tudors, but there was way too much sex in that. Like I had to VidAngel that whole thing where you like fast forward through all the bad parts. But like, okay, is that really what happened? Is that who was that guy? Who's Oliver Cromwell? Not Oliver Cromwell. Sorry. Thomas Cromwell. Like you're Cramner. Cromwell? Both of them, actually. Anyway, yada, yada.
Both of them.
Googling
That's my favorite thing, when you just go on like little rants like that and you're still somehow correct. Oh, yes, both of them.
Well, there was a Cromwell and a Cramner. Both things. One was a priest and the other one was a guy who killed a bunch of people.
Yeah.
Anyway, yada, yada. It's just, I just think that this is a good way to do that. So like when you're thinking about how you're going to age your kids up in things, what shows are you thinking you want to show to them?
Well, so I'm the worst person to ask because as you know, I have a 9-year-old, a 7-year-old, and a 4-year-old. And so like, they're all still interested in some of the same stuff. We're watching a lot of sports now. So NHL, NFL, NBA. We've talked about how commercials are a concern. There's just insane commercials out there for like leagues. I get it. If it's like a night game, 9 p.m., but like at noon on a Saturday during a playoff hockey game, you're going to have all these, commercials. I digress. So we're doing it a little bit there. But I'm excited to watch things like Boy Meets World with my kids, which for me, that's going from Wildcrats and Bluey and cartoons that they're watching to the middle ground. And you're talking about middle ground to adult content.
Yeah.
And so I haven't even thought about that since my oldest is 9.
Yeah.
I'm thinking like, Remember the Titans.
Yeah.
And you're like, that's a kid's movie. And I'm like, well, my kids wouldn't be that interested in it because it's not a cartoon.
Yeah.
But they're just starting to be okay with those kind of non-cartoony movies.
The escalation happens super, super fast is the thing. And parents with older kids, you can tell me I'm wrong if you want, hit me up in the comments. But like when your kid starts getting interested in something bigger than Bluey, something more adult than Bluey, very quickly they end up in inappropriate territory. We've talked a lot about, we had the kissing booth last month. We had Jenny and Georgia. Like, these are things that appeal to them. I want there to be an alternative where kids can be interested in something that's grown up, that's maybe a little bit gruesome, that's maybe a little bit scary, a little bit more complicated, but not just sex constantly and constantly trying to give them this impression that the world is so much different than it really is.
Yeah.
You know?
Maybe the old school Goosebumps. Old school Goosebumps.
Still a kid's show. Still a kid's show.
Darn it.
It was on Nickelodeon, boy. Anyway, I think that this is, so you were talking about ages, right?
Yeah. What age do you think this is appropriate for to watch?
I think that this is something that's appropriate around the age of 13, 8th grade, right around like the time, I don't know, does it happen here? 8th graders go to Washington, D.C. for their 8th grade field trip?
When I was in 8th grade, it did.
Yeah. So they do that at our school. And I know it's like pretty popular nationwide to send your 8th graders to Washington, D.C. And so they go to the Holocaust Museum. They see the Lincoln Memorial. I think around then, good to throw in a little bit of Manhunt.
Yeah, I'm with you. I actually also said 13, 14.
Hey!
Look at us. That's kind of rare.
Yes,
so
never happens.
We'll take it.
Yeah.
But now I am going to start thinking about this kind of evolution, because you're right. It goes quickly, and it's about to happen in some small way here with me and mine.
Yeah. So you're going to have to figure out how you're going to introduce Law and Order.
Dun dun.
Hey, if people were really interested in this episode, if they really liked it, where can they find more content from us?
Well, then go to isthisforkids.com or YouTube and look up ITFK or Is This For Kids. Yeah. Both will pop up. And you can comment, go to Instagram, give us suggestions, smash a like, subscribe, and comment. I like to talk back to them. I want to like have conversations Ruby
with
is
them.
Begging you to comment on
Please
things so that she
to me.
can
I'm
talk
lonely.
to you. I am also being better about checking all the social media and stuff and replying.
Yeah, it's good.
So yeah, we'd love to see you there, and leave us 5-star reviews all over all the audio versions.
Everywhere. Hey, there is so much content out there for parents to navigate through.
I'm Jonathan Beard of Blevins.
I'm Katie, Mrs. Ruby. Let us help you decide.
Is this for kids? Assassinating the President is not.
It's not.